What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Culture Based Podcast. We're excited to be here. I'm your co-host Dustin. With me, as always, per usual. This is episode 8, so we're in a usual flow now. 8 weeks, 2 months of the pod. Blake, can you believe it?
Oh, let's go. That's a lot.
2 months.
Yeah, 2 more, and we get past like 80 or 90% of podcasts that start up.
I love it, which is guaranteed to happen because we have content for days that we can't wait to bring to you. I want to remind everybody that we're here to help leaders know what they're about, show where they're going, and develop a scalable team to get there. Today, we're going to talk money, but not just any money. We're going to talk about the cost of turnover.
All that money you're losing.
All that money that's just flying out the window, getting eaten up by other big birds that are also flying.
Yep. I only know because I'm losing it too.
And I wouldn't know anything about that. I'm just a dumb host. All right. So we're going to get into that in a second. I want to thank everybody. If you're listening to this on an audio podcast platform, would love for you to leave a 5-star review. Don't be stingy with your stars. 4 is not enough. Make it 5. Why not? Be nice. Be kind. Add some kindness in the world with your stars. Why don't you? 5-star review would be great. If you don't have anything nice to say, you don't have to say anything at all. But if you do, we'd love to hear about it. Only if it's nice, though. We're fragile people. If you're watching on YouTube, I want to invite you to like, subscribe, ring the bell. Blake's having a day. I'm trying to get him to laugh. Look, he's already crying. Like, subscribe, ring the bell. If you're watching on YouTube, you can be notified there. I actually just set some stuff up earlier for us to be able to go live there. So might be one of those things in the future where you're just hanging out randomly on a Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon, and all of a sudden you're like, what? The Culture Base is live. Let's see this podcast unedited. That's your chance to see it.
Then you'd be like, never mind. We should.
And then they're like, you know what? Ooh, liked it better when they cut out all the dumb stuff. But yeah, we'll might pop in some live stuff. Who knows? Speaking of live stuff, on our LinkedIn page as well, we have the ability to go live. I thought that'd be super fun. So we're gonna be setting that up probably the next couple of weeks, and maybe just randomly pop in there. So you definitely want to make sure that you're over there in those spaces following us so that you can be notified when those things happen. You can follow us on Instagram or LinkedIn. I think we're also on the Facebooks at the Culture Base, BASE. And if you want to talk to us about anything that we're talking about, maybe the cost of turnover, maybe generational differences, we would love to come alongside you and your company and help you with your culture. You can click the Let's Talk button at theculturebase.com. And lastly, this upcoming Thursday, so 2 days from the time that this airs, 2 days from now, is going to be our second ever think tank session. And it is going to be centered around the topic of generational differences, which we discussed in our previous episode 7. Maybe go back and listen to episode 7 if you missed it. And then go to theculturebase.com and click on Think Tanks. Put your email address in there, and then we will send you a personalized, super exclusive, wait for it, Zoom link. I know.
Sequence packet.
But trust me, this Zoom link is not like other Zoom links. This is one you actually want to be a part of, and you can be excited when you click the join button. And you can, be centered around some like-minded leaders like you who are thinking about the same things you're thinking about, and get an opportunity for us to kind of grow together. Blake's going to be leading the discussion this time around as I'll be out of town. And Blake literally wrote a book with chapters in it about generational differences. So,
with chapters in it.
With chapters in it.
There's only like 2 pictures.
Let me just tell you, this book has pages and everything, y'all. Look at this. It's a real book.
It's a real book.
Real book. Just like Blake's real boy. All right. Culturebase.com/think tanks. We're here, buddy. We're doing this.
Let's do this, man. Let's do it.
We're doing this. We're talking today about money. Cost of turnover.
And you are. He's guys, Dustin is trying to bring the energy to a whole nother level because my energy seems to be at the bottom of the pits right now. And so He is going over and beyond, and I applaud him for such. And I promise he's already lifted me up at least 2 energy points.
I love it.
Get 3 energy points, and you get a Shroot Buck.
A Shroot Buck. Yeah. I was just trying not to suck 3% less.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. All right, let's dive right into this thing. So there are tons of articles out there. If you search on the World Wide Webs, business leaders, brilliant speakers and authors, everybody's talking about this topic of the cost of turnover. But few leaders, Blake, in our research have really dug deep enough to find out what the cost actually is. Why don't leaders dig into this further?
There are many reasons. I think one of the easy reasons is just that it's easier to not. It's easier to just assume
ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, this, it's probably around this, so we'll keep it at that. Like, oh, I don't want to look at my P&L because what if it looks bad and then I'm gonna have bad feelings? And like, it's just like the thoughts we have about these circumstances create those feelings. Well, we want to shy away from that idea. And I think business leaders love to just deal with things they can deal with immediately a lot of times. And so like, man, I can go work myself out of this problem. Well, a lot of times with the cost of turnover, it's like trying to figure that out is highlighting a problem. It's not highlighting an opportunity necessarily, but it is, right? It is highlighting opportunity. So I think one of the reasons is it's just easier not to. Not cheaper not to, it's just easier not to.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that it is it's harder to quantify. It isn't like an easy thing to come to because there are a lot of variables that are not hard fixed numbers. We can get closer to those variables and get them closer to a fixed number, but we're never going to be at a place that it is incredibly clear. But I think business leaders, we're okay dealing in generalities and bigger numbers and higher quantifiables, more or less, right? So we're okay to be like, well, it's probably X amount of dollars. And the more you digest turnover and get into this, you'll come to a closer ballpark, right? So I think that's the idea is, do you even know what ballpark you're in? And I don't think leaders do know what ballpark they're in. I think the majority of business leaders just think it's a cost of doing business. But
yeah, that's really good. It's kind of an analogy that we talked about before we hopped on. And we're gonna just take a step back further here in a second and just kind of ask, okay, well then, if we're not digging deeper into this, and we talked about the reason why leaders aren't digging deeper into this, let's just step back for a second and just talk about why knowing the cost of turnover is vital to the success of your company in the first place. And we talked about kind of ignorance is bliss and those types of reasons why they don't dig in further. But I think, like you just kind of alluded to, the cost of doing business, it's an assumptive nature that many leaders feel is always going to be there and there's no way to avoid it. So what's the point in trying to navigate around it or trying to really, why waste our precious valuable time as leaders? Oh, so precious, right? Why waste all that time? That was my Adam Sandler. Oh, it's precious. Why waste our time doing the things that really won't matter in the long haul?
Yeah.
We made the analogy before we hit record on this episode that for me, I think it's a lot of leaders view it the same way that many people in America view car payments, that we're always going to have a car payment. So let's just deal with it. It's just a necessary evil. It's the cost of doing business, right? It's the cost of living. We're always going to have this, but we know that some of the richest people in the world don't have car payments. You might go, well, that's because they could pay cash for that Maserati. But the reason they can pay cash for that Maserati is because they lived smartly, right? Yeah. And they got to a point where they could do that. And so I think it's something that we have to kind of turn on its head for business leaders and people that own run companies to understand this is not an acceptable problem to just kind of leave laying in the corner of your room,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So Blake, talk to us about why knowing the cost of their turnover is so valuable. Let's just take a step back for a second.
Hmm.
Why should we care about this? Why should we not just accept it for what it is and move on?
Because we're trying to profit, right? We're trying to profit in business, period. We're trying to profit at the highest point we can as the most successful, scalable team that we possibly can. Profit is not our number one goal, but it is a identifier. It's a scoreboard of how your team is doing. And so the thing is this is the easiest of ones to be like, if I have lower turnover, and like if I lose someone, it costs me over $14,000. If I lose 10 people, I can tell you it's costing me $140,000, right? So if that's true, and I can lose 5 people and only lose $70,000, where does that other $70,000 go? Towards the benefit of the company, towards growing in profit, towards getting a better bottom line, towards having more productive work. This is the area when you talk about the 3 areas where we profit. The way to increase profit, one is increase revenue, right? We increase revenue, but we're also increasing expenses. So are you really increasing profit all that much? Not really. The other way is to cut down expenses. This is one of those ways too, right here. Cut down the expense of turnover. Okay. See it as an expense, because if you cut that down, that's a lot easier to save money on the bottom line.
So good.
And then the last part is productivity. So not only is not having a ton of turnover helpful to cutting the expense of turnover, now we're operating at a higher productivity because you're not constantly training, you're not constantly redeveloping, you're not constantly bringing processes back up, you're not constantly going through hiring processes, you're not. Do you see how exhausting it is to go through the process of turnover? I know it's exhausting to have to think about your turnover, but I promise it's 10 times more exhausting to constantly be going through it.
Yeah. So that's just kind of our upper 30,000 foot view of why this is so important. I think there's some things too, right, Blake, that kind of will knowing this number, right, has got to shift not just a way of thinking, but it has to shift a way of interacting, and has to shift your way of doing business day to day, whether it's internally with your team, external, other B2B sales, B2C sales, like all those types of things come into play. And I think one of the main things that I think of when I think about how it affects your day to day is how fast are you hiring and how slow are you firing?
And you're asking me that specifically here?
No. I'm asking the leader who's watching.
Mm.
How fast are you hiring and how slow are you firing? Because I think you need to swap the two. I think if you can just slow down for half a second and not be so overly anxious about the spots that you have to fill and just any old warm body will do, then you will understand very quickly how this cost of turnover can be reduced if you just slow down. And I know I'm talking to visionaries. I know I'm talking to big planners here, the big idea guys in the room, the ones who have got it all figured out. If everybody would just shut up and listen to them, right? Now's your time to shut up and listen, because if you can just slow it down, then you can hire the right people, wait for it, and then your turnover goes down. And if your turnover goes down, your expenses go down and your productivity, like Blake said, goes up. What are the other ways you see, Blake, of this playing out?
Yeah. And I think you think like the best way to think of this is like you're designing it. You're being intentional about it, right? So
not letting it happen to you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's what people think hiring is it's just I got to find people to fit these things, instead of I'm designing how we're going to get to this goal. I'm designing the right people who fit this role to get to this goal. I'm designing the right teams and what they look like. This is where strategy has to play. And if we don't take the time for that strategy, it's chaos. I had a customer say to me recently, and it's a customer of a customer, but they said, we were talking about getting designs done, and the designs have changed like 4 times. And so which means we've repriced it like 4 times. And they came and said, "Well, what would you rather? Would you rather have the whole design up front, or would you rather have like be able to get some of the design so you can start estimating and then we just give you more as it goes?" And I was like, "Is this a joke? Like, are we 100% I want the full design? We will spend 10 times more effort, energy, focus on try to design as we go than we will if we just sit down, look at what's needed, quantify all the unquantifiables, and then just go." You're going to have so much better success when everything can be focused on the design of what you're doing. So when we talk about the costs of turnover, Dustin's exactly right. This is not about like this is an episode about turnover, but this is more of an episode about focusing on the design you have to not have the turnover. Focusing on the design to not hire the undesirables. Okay. And I don't mean bad people. I just mean people who don't fit your culture and fit the work. Okay. So this cost of turnover, it's going to kill you. And if you're just thinking of it minutely, okay, and I'm very passionate about this. Obviously, I'm
I
like,
know you just said, I know, because you just said a literal quote. You just said, "Is this cost of turnover is going to kill you?"
yes, it is. It is literally going to. I feel like I'm from Parks and Rec,
I
but we're
love
not.
it.
We're thinking about it so small. It
Yeah.
just like Dustin said, we're thinking of it like a car payment, but a car payment is to pay for one thing. It's just the car, right? It's the thing you have. What about the average salary of whoever's hiring your people? What about the time they spend on that stuff? What about the development they have to spend in teaching these new people, no matter what level they are in your organization, platform training or design training or whatever else it is that's even specific to the job? I'm not even there yet. What about drug screens, background checks, cost of just employee expenses that are going to go into this person who may not stick around long term?
Yeah.
Okay?
Uniforms, office supplies.
Name it, all the burden stuff, all the holidays you're going to pay out, and all of that you're building in their development. They have, like, I think they say it takes anywhere from like on an entry level position like a year and a half to like 3 years to
Yeah.
fully have someone vetted to operate at the rate of which you're most likely like estimating or giving pricing on stuff. The rate you think it takes, it's taking people a year and a half to 3 years to even get to that.
So let's play out that scenario for a second, Blake, just for people that are practical and numbers people like me. So let's say on this, let's go conservative and say it takes them 18 months. It's a year and a half. Let's
Mhm,
say this person makes a salary of $50,000 a year. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say that includes all the benefits as well, right?
mhm.
So it's a $50,000 package,
Yep.
okay, per year,
Okay.
right? So this person's going to take 18 months to get fully embedded and trained up in the culture and the processes and all the technicalities, right?
Mhm.
$75,000
Yeah. If not,
without even without even talking about all the other things that you talked about of someone else having to train them,
mhm.
of the uniforms, of the office supplies, of all the tools and software bits. And I had to increase our software level to this number because they put us over this number, and now we have this more many people. So many different things, right?
Yeah. And I know that the majority of the time, what the business leader is going to think the cost of turnover is, well, what's their salary? Oh, we can find that. And that's it. That's their whole equation was what is salary? End of story. And they're missing that if you are constantly churning people like this, you're probably having to create positions within your organization that wouldn't have to exist there if you would just do the right design work.
Yeah.
You just
So
did
let
the development work, you wouldn't have that.
So I know that you and your company use a kind of an internal version of a turnover calculator, and we're going to talk about a generic turnover calculator here in a little bit. But I know that you've probably done this so many times, you could probably ballpark it faster than I can.
Yeah.
So let's just take that same person, right? We already said $50,000 salary takes a year and a half to integrate. what are the other costs that are going to add up to that? What are we looking at for a $50,000 salaried position if we turn them over? What ballpark? Kind of walk us through some of those bullet points and what you think the cost would be at the end of all that. I know there's tons of variables and
For sure.
tons of different market adjustments and all that other stuff, but let's just try to keep it broad strokes here for the people that are kind of going along on this journey for the very first time.
So I think what a lot of people will do, and a great high level thing to do, is to look at multipliers, right? Look at a multiplier that you would add on to their annual salary. I have heard anywhere from 1.2 to 1.5 for entry level. The higher you go up in development, you're probably talking one or around the 2 to 3s. Anything in executive level, you're probably closer to the 4 to 5s. Okay, those multipliers that now that position is gone and you have to rehire and bring someone up to that level. So if we were just talking about a real quick, like you got a 1.25 multiplier, it's $50,000. You're looking at about what, $60,000 essentially. And for us, what we look at is how long is it going to take them to get to this point where they are, like, what did I lose by them not being 100%? Right. So that's, for me, I'm looking at, like, if I was looking at a $45,000 person and did like a 1.2 multiplier, it'd take me around like 57,000. Right. However, in the first year of having them, if they were only doing 60%, I'm only getting, like, I'm basically losing close to $25,000 to $30,000 of production that wasn't done at a rate I was paying for.
Say that again, because I think that's a super important, and just kind of one more time for the people, for the slow learners in the back like me.
So if in year one, I'm only going to at best get 60% production out of that person, then what I'm paying,
the other 40% is being spent with training and onboarding and bringing them up to speed and all the types of things that take time.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So if I'm looking at that, then I'm looking at about 25 to 30,000 that is not being produced based off of what I'm paying.
Right. You hired them to produce 100%.
Exactly.
But they can't, because they're only producing 60%, because just that's the nature of the beast, right? It takes time to onboard people.
Exactly. So now, as people are, what do they do on the flip side is, let's increase our labor hours. Let's increase how much we charge the customer. And it's because their turnover is so bad, they're having to charge a higher rate because they know that they're losing on the backside. And I'm not saying that's not a good business decision. I just think it's an unnecessary business decision, because you could be keeping a lower overhead to where the next year, maybe they're at 80 to 90% and you are potentially only losing, $5,000 to $10,000 on that production. Year 3, if they're operating at that 100% level, they're probably making you money at that point, right? Like, they're going past those points of where their level of expertise is, and they're making you money. Are they costing you money? Sure. But they're also making that money back tenfold.
Only because I know that you're smart enough to answer this on the fly, and we didn't discuss this beforehand. I'm going to throw this at you.
That's scary.
What do you say? Because I'm sitting here going, okay, I can hear a leader saying, but I'm not going to give that dude a year. We have a 90-day policy at our place.
Yeah.
So in 90 days, I'm going to know whether or not he's going to make it or not. What do you say to that?
Like, whether they're hitting 100% capacity at that point?
I just want to say, how big of a deal is cost of turnover for someone who has a 90-day plan like most companies have?
Yeah, and we have a 90-day plan. I just think it has to be realistic. Like, if your realistic is 100%, then I think you have gone so far away from remembering what it was like to not know what you know today. Okay, you don't remember what it was like to not know. And so that's the biggest problem, is you think, oh, like a lot of times we underestimate what we understand, and we overestimate what we don't understand. A lot of times I hear business owners, project managers, especially in the electrical industry, like, oh, it only takes 1 minute to put a receptacle on. I'm like, oh my gosh, don't bid like that. Like, if you don't have 7 times that, you're in trouble, bud. And like, just even having those conversations, because people don't remember everything. Like, what about all the trips they had to make to go pick up all that material, or, oh, I forgot this. And then they mosey on back and grab it. And then they're like, guess what? I forgot another thing. And then they mosey on back. And, we don't remember all that stuff. And we also are not robots. People experience ups and downs. And if you don't remember what it was like to not remember, you're doing your team a disservice.
Man,
but
that is so good. That's the answer I was looking for without knowing it. That's cool. All right. So we've talked a lot about some of the numbers and factors that go into that. Or were there any that we missed that you feel like we need to cover there, or can we move on to the next point?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. So we talked about all those different factors that go into it and the things that you shouldn't be thinking about, or the things that you should be thinking about that we often don't think about. So now, kind of to wrap this discussion up, what do we do with all this information? We go, okay, well, 90 days isn't realistic for it to have somebody come up to 100% capacity, right? So, so we're going to invest, a year or 18 months into this person. Hopefully by that point, we figured out, you have a 90-day plan, like you said, we figured out this person's well on their way. We have checkpoints, we have milestones. But what do we do with all this information now? Do we just kind of go, like, do we take 2 years to hire somebody? Do we hold production on everything? Do we fire people like that need to go? Like, what do we do with all this?
Yeah, I think first we don't have passive development will be the number one for me. Don't have passive development. If it's, hey, they should just take this long to get here, of like, yeah, maybe it takes them 3 months to learn these things, and maybe it takes them 6 months to learn these. And you kind of set that up. Okay, you're taking the step in the right direction. That's good.
Yeah.
What are you doing to develop a plan around that? Like, what if you could teach them to do that thing that you're saying probably takes 3 months to get there? What if you could teach them in a day? What if you took a very focused day to develop that aspect of them?
Right.
Because this is where the focused attention goes. What I want to do, like in our onboarding and development, is we're trying to get people through our boot camp where we're teaching them the 20% they're going to do 80% of the time, but we're doing very focused attention. It's like, I think Traction talks about how, like, the sun puts off trillions of rays of sunlight, but the most you're going to get is a sunburn. Whereas one single focused ray of light and energy can cut through metal. Why? It's because it's focused on that thing. And so the first thing I would say is don't have passive development, have very focused development around the things you need to see quickly. If you say this is a metric we go by, if you don't have a development alongside it that isn't just permission to play stuff for the industry, then it's kind of on you too. Okay. And you can minimize that time. If it's a year that they're only going to get to 60%, what if you could get them there in 6 months? Okay. Now you potentially just cut $15,000 out of the equation.
Yeah.
Just by that focus and on one person. So focused attention is really good. So the next thing I think has to be, how are you focusing and looking into this? Like, really, it is just go look at these items of how much does the person who does your hiring, how much does it cost them to go through the process? How long does it take them? How many calls do they roughly have to field? I think it's just getting in here and figuring it out. I think that was the most holy crap moment to me, is when I got in and was like, well, let me just write down a list of all the variables I think probably go into turnover. And I wrote those out. And then I was like, how can I prove this? How can I prove or see how much time goes into this? How much money goes into this? You follow the time, you follow the money, you're going to start seeing, okay, I don't know the exact cost that it cost me to lose said person, but I know it's over 14,000. And that's different than thinking it was just like a couple $1,000s.
Yeah. Because
now that's on your P&L. That's on your balance sheet. Like that's now on the financials, and you've got to hold account to it,
Yeah. Or someone has a bad finance person, or they don't have a finance person, and they're sitting there looking at their P&Ls going, I don't know where all the money's going. Think we just found it.
Yeah. Yep. Or labor. And what is the response to that? Well, labor is just really expensive right now. Not for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. It can still be your biggest line item, but isn't, and if that's true, if labor is your biggest line item, where do you think you should focus? That's a simple one right there. Think about that. If it's your largest line item, why are you not focusing on that? Well, what if we could just build the best, product and get out there and more people are going to buy it? You still got people. You still got people having to build it. You still have people having to transition it from ops to sales or from sales to ops to customer relation. You still got all that. That's where you need to be focusing. That's why this culture crap matters. Okay. It does, because good culture keeps people where they are. Okay. Bad culture, it's like one of the top 3 reasons people leave in a heartbeat. Good culture, people are going to hang around. Okay. Even if you're not the most highest paid place. I don't encourage you to be the highest paid place. And not because I don't think people should have money. I think it should be, right and well, and that, everyone should make a good life. That's Adam Smith's form of economic development, is that the whole system would get better, right? Not just the Milton Friedman form of capitalism where he says that it's all about the shareholders. Adam Smith's all about the people. I'm all for that. But if you're going to manipulate by the dollar by just having the highest paid, then you're not leaving yourself room to have good development and good culture. And then you won't be the highest paid and they'll just jump to that person. Or you will be the highest paid, and even more insulting, they'll jump to someone else because they can't deal with your shit.
I mean, that's mic drop worthy. There's really nothing else to say. I was going to ask, well, do you have any more thoughts? I don't want to hear them, because it doesn't get any better and simpler than that. Want to remind you again to join our think tanks this week. The cool part about joining this think tank now, especially with the given episode that we're talking here about the cost of turnover, is that we are working on a free resource for you as a leader called a turnover calculator. Now, I know there's all sorts of turnover calculators out there, but hopefully the discussion that we just spent the last half hour talking about will get you to understand that we're going to break this down for you a little bit more than the kind of the standard cost turnover calculators that exist out there right now. And so we understand what's broken in all of those. And so we're putting effort in right now with our engineers and developers to, and with Blake's knowledge to kind of get us the information that you need and that you deserve to know as a leader. And so we want to come alongside you and help you with that, with a free resource. So if you want to be the first to know about that free resource, here's a great way to know about it. Go ahead and sign up for our think tank sessions, because that's going to put you on our email list. And the email list is going to be the first one to know when we roll that out. Otherwise, you have to just keep checking back every day at theculturebase.com, and just going to skyrocket our views up, which is cool too. But I think you don't have the time for that. Let's just go ahead and put your name on our email list. Let us send it to you one more time at theculturebase.com. Click on the think tanks button, put in your email address, and you'll be the first to know about this turnover calculator that's coming out very, very soon. I promise. I think that's everything that we have for today. Next episode, we're going to talk about drumroll.
I am a professional beatboxer.
Look at him. What was that? That's like how I would do it. All right. Our next episode, drum roll excluded, is how to recover from losing your top talent. It's going to be a fun discussion. Can't wait to talk to you about that. But before that, this Thursday, Think Tank Sessions, we're going to talk generational differences. Go back and listen to episode 7. It's going to be a good time. Until then, we'll talk to you next time on the Culture Base podcast.